Welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo. Our top stories this morning. Bill Cosby is in court today, scheduled to be sentenced. The latest we're hearing is that Cosby himself will not speak, nor will anyone else on his behalf. We'll have the latest on that from the courtroom. We're also taking a look at new accusations against Brett Kavanaugh and a new accuser now coming forward. We'll have the latest on that, but first, here are your top headlines.
New tariffs in effect on about $200 billion worth of Chinese imports to the U.S.
Price increases could impact essential everyday items from food and furniture to backpacks and bicycles.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm letting her stop at Michael stop.
It's the alarming video that cost this bus driver her job.
Okay. First, we gotta put your foot on the brake. There you go.
A child behind the wheel of a school bus. The other students on board capturing the wild ride. Police say 27-year-old Joandria McAtee allowed 3 students ages 11, 13, and 17 to take turns driving her bus for short stretches in rural Indiana on the way home from school. Police charging her with a felony, neglect of a dependent.
Firefighters are trying to get control of a new wildfire north of L.A. The Charlie Fire has burned more than 3,000 acres.
One of the biggest names in video games turns 129 years old today. Nintendo started out as a playing card company in Japan in 1889.
Welcome to ABC News Live. We're going to start things off with breaking news coming in right now. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is on his way to the White House amid questions of whether or not he will be fired. Now, this after a New York Times report said that Rosenstein proposed recording the president and suggested he was unfit for office. We are keeping track of that story for you, and we will give you the latest as we get it. But first, let's go over to Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. A new accuser is now coming forward with new sexual misconduct allegations against him. She says Kavanaugh exposed himself to her during their freshman year at Yale. Kavanaugh adamantly denies these accusations. Terry Moran is keeping track of all of it for us from Capitol Hill. Terry, what does this all mean for Kavanaugh's nomination proceedings?
Well, it throws it all into disarray. Right now, however, the White House wants to proceed with what was an agreement reached over the weekend between the Senate Judiciary Committee and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who alleged that in high school Judge Kavanaugh had allegedly sexually assaulted her. And right now that testimony is scheduled for Thursday. The White House wants to go through with that, have Judge Kavanaugh up there swearing he didn't do it, have Dr. Christine Blasey Ford describing what she says is her truth, that he did, and that would be it. Right now, however, there are these other allegations that have emerged. Another woman, Deborah Ramirez, going on the record, coming forward publicly with the New Yorker magazine, saying that in college, at a drunken dormitory party, Brett Kavanaugh allegedly exposed himself to her. That is something that Senator Dianne Feinstein, ranking Democrat on the committee, says needs to be investigated and that this all should be delayed. But it looks like the game plan for Republicans, full speed ahead, get through this first allegation, maybe hope the other one goes away. And
Terry, in terms of that first allegation, Blasey Ford had asked for other witnesses to be called in that investigation. Do you think that'll happen?
Right now, the Judiciary Committee is insisting that there will not be additional witnesses to Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Blasey Ford. That's going to be hard to maintain, though, because just by the nature of this conflict in their stories, people are going to naturally want to hear from the other people mentioned, especially Mark Judge, who Dr. Blasey Ford alleges was in the room inciting Brett Kavanaugh to do these things. He has denied that. Judiciary Committee does not want to go any further than that. It could be that the momentum of the stories that the country will hear from both of these people will require them to go forward, but they don't want to.
And Terry, as you mentioned, they are now launching a new investigation into these new accusations. Any timeline on how long that's expected to take?
Could take a while. You know, right now this is not just Deborah Ramirez against Brett Kavanaugh. It's the New Yorker versus the New York Times. The New Yorker went with this story by Ronan Farrow, who has done such excellent work on Me Too revelations. And yet, Deborah Ramirez acknowledges she was inebriated at the time. Her own memory is spotty, and in a line that is rare, to say the least, in investigative journalism, Ron Farrow described her as reluctant to come forward, but, quote, after carefully assessing her own memories and consulting with her attorneys, she decided that this, in fact, was Brett Kavanaugh who did this to her. The New York Times says they interviewed, quote, dozens of people in that dorm, mentioned by Deborah Ramirez. None of them remember this incident or saw it or have any account that could support her. And so this could be something that will take a long time to investigate, or perhaps the Judiciary Committee will say, just like the New York Times, we haven't found any corroboration. We don't need to hear from her.
All right, a lot to sort through. Terry Moran on Capitol Hill for us. Terry, thanks. And now let's get over to the White House for the president's response to all of this. Karen Travers is there at the White House for us. Karen, the message seems to be clear so far that the White House backs Kavanaugh.
Yeah, full steam ahead on this nomination. There is no plan B at this point, Diana. There's not even talk about going down the list that the president has had of options for Supreme Court nominees, that list that he's had for 2 years. They are sticking with Kavanaugh. And today, the president is actually in New York. He's at the United Nations General Assembly, but the controversy back in Washington still following him up there. He made it very clear this morning in comments on camera that he is sticking with Kavanaugh firmly. Here's what he had to say.
He's a fine man with an unblemished past, and these are highly unsubstantiated statements from people represented by lawyers. You should look into the lawyers doing the representation. Judge Kavanaugh is an outstanding person, and I am with him all the way. We'll see how it goes with the Senate. We'll see how it goes with the vote. I think it could be, there's a chance that this could be one of the single most unfair, unjust things to happen to a candidate for anything. But I am with Judge Kavanaugh, and I look forward to a vote. And for people to come out of the woodwork from 36 years ago and 30 years ago and never mention it, all of a sudden it happens. In my opinion, it's totally political. It is totally political. Thank you.
And Diana, right there, the president is questioning the timing of these allegations, wondering why now this is coming out after decades of when it allegedly happened. Last week, the president was asked if he thought these allegations were political, and he said no, but, maybe see in a couple of days. Now there he is flat out saying this is politics. The White House last night, after the New Yorker story published, called it an uncorroborated claim, and they say that this is part of a well-planned out smear campaign by Democrats to tear down a good man.
All right, and Karen, that's not the only controversy in Washington the president is dealing with. We're hearing that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, is on his way to the White House. This after the New York Times reported that he offered to essentially record the president and wanted him out of office. What's the latest you're hearing on that?
We are hearing that Rod Rosenstein was summoned to the White House, where the expectation is that he will be fired. The president, of course, is not at the White House, so this would not be a sit-down with the president. But the president has made it very clear in the last couple of months he was not happy with Rod Rosenstein, and that was because of the Russia probe. Rosenstein oversees Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe because, of course, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, recused himself, so it fell to his deputy. The president has had many opportunities in the last few months to express confidence, to give Rosenstein assurances that his job was safe. He notably would not do that.
All right. Well, I know there are a lot of political ramifications that go into that decision as well, so we are watching it closely. We want to make sure we have it right before we report everything, but we're watching that one closely. And lastly, Karen, with all of this going on, I know it's also a busy day and a busy week for the president at the UN General Assembly. What's on the agenda there?
The president has a packed schedule up in New York for the next couple of days. Today, he will sit down with 3 different world leaders. First up, the president of South Korea, a close ally of the president's, of course. And then later tonight, the presidents of Egypt and and France in separate meetings. The president's agenda with the South Korean president is, of course, North Korea. President Moon has been playing a very critical role in bringing together the United States and North Korea. He was critical in setting up that meeting with Kim Jong-un earlier this summer. They're also going to be signing, the two presidents, an updated trade agreement between the U.S. and South Korea. This is a very big priority for President Trump. And then, Diana, he speaks tomorrow, addresses the entire General Assembly. But notably, this is very different than his speech from last year, where he was still an unknown quantity. Now he is very much a known quantity. He has had meetings with many of these world leaders. Instead of the little rocket man threats like last year against Kim Jong-un, look for the president to be talking about U.S. sovereignty, working with countries that are key allies.
All right, Karen Travers from D.C. for us. Karen, thank you. And from Washington over to Pennsylvania now, where it could be Bill Cosby's last day as a free man. Cosby's in court for sentencing right now after being convicted of sexual assault in April. And the big news this morning is that neither Cosby nor any friends or family will be speaking on his behalf. Elizabeth Herr is outside the courtroom in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Elizabeth, normally defendants like to take this opportunity to kind of maybe win over the judge a little bit, try to get a lighter sentence. Why is Cosby not speaking?
You know, Diane, that is the one answer we don't have right now, but we do know, as you mentioned, that's a defense tactic that was just announced about an hour ago. We learned this from our colleague, Lindsay Davis, who is in the courtroom. And according to Lindsay, defense attorneys made that announcement saying that, no, we will not be hearing from Bill Cosby, nor will anyone be speaking on his behalf. Certainly for reasons we don't know yet, but certainly this is something that the defense team thinks will work in Cosby's favor in getting that more lenient punishment. But absolutely, we will be hearing from Andrea Constand, the victim, who was expected to read her victim impact statement.
Yeah,
Diane?
I understand his attorney said he's said all he has to say on the matter, something along those lines. I wonder, I know Constand is expected to speak. What else is expected to happen today?
Well, today we know that this hearing got underway with a debate over a Pennsylvania law that could allow Cosby to be branded what is called a sexually violent predator. Now, what we are hearing is that people who are supporting this law are saying absolutely Cosby should be labeled that, saying that just because he's a celebrity, he shouldn't be treated any differently, and the law applies to him. But as you can imagine, his defense attorneys are putting up a big fight, saying this is obviously this is a scarlet letter that they do not want, and they're in fact inside arguing that this law is unconstitutional. And again, they're fighting this law because should he be branded a sexually violent predator, what that means is that here in Pennsylvania, it is a mandatory lifetime counseling, and wherever he ends up being, it is a community notification of whereabouts. So it's something that his defense team right now, I understand, is fighting so that he does not get that label.
And Elizabeth, how many years is he facing?
We know that he's been convicted of 3 felony counts of aggravated indecent assault, and each count carries a maximum of 10 years. And so he could be sentenced to up to 30 years in prison, or he could be sent home on probation. So it's a wide range. But of course, as you can imagine, Constand and the other women, there were more than 60 other women who accused of sexual molestation, and 5 of them were allowed to testify, and many of them are inside right now. Some of them talked to reporters yesterday, and as you can imagine, they told us they're certainly hoping that Cosby gets the maximum of 30 years in prison.
All right,
Diane?
We'll see. This could be over today or maybe tomorrow. We'll be watching closely. Elizabeth Herr from outside the courtroom in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Elizabeth, thank you. And now let's check in at your weather forecast. Ginger Z is in our weather center with a look at what we can expect for today. Ginger?
Diane, thank you. Wish we had different news for South Carolina, but now more than 8,000 homes evacuated just Sunday. Remember, this is now more than a week since Florence made landfall. You can see the homes in Horry County, South Carolina, that are surrounded by water. The Waccamaw River is the one that we're watching for that to crest by Wednesday, this week. So that by that point and by the end of the week, it'll still be in record stage. That was 2 weeks after Florence made landfall. Flash flood watches and place because there's a slow-moving system in Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Indiana, and even West Virginia. That's where we've got flash flood watches up through Wednesday for this system because it's going to take its sweet time getting out of here. And a lot of tropical moisture pooling up against these. You add that to another low sliding up the front, and you're going to have the possibility of severe weather from Chicago to Indianapolis, even into Detroit. That comes on Tuesday afternoon and evening. Also, we're watching those fires in the west. We wish so badly we could take some of this water and pour it out there, but the Charlie fire now burning more than 3,300 acres. You can see the images there from Southern California. In Northern California, the relative humidities are as low as 2% in some of the mountaintops. That is so dry. Add a little bit of wind, a front or two, or anything coming through really, and from Utah to Wyoming and even parts of far northwestern Colorado, you've got red flag warnings for gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Diane?
All right, Ginger Z from the Weather Center, and that does it for us here at ABC News Live. Remember, you can check your headlines all day long at abcnews.com or at your ABC News app. For ABC News Live, I'm Diane Macedo. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for watching.